Did you hear me say snack?
I did not hear you say snack.
Okay,
Either
so
you're hungry or your cat is somewhere around.
Yeah, he's being emo. He's like, okay, he woke me up at 4 a.m. and now it's time for him to go nap. Well, guess what's going to happen today?
Oh, you're going to wake him up.
Oh, yeah. It's like, come on, poke him with my face and claw at him. And
yeah. It only serves him right.
It does.
But, you know, in his defense, he probably thinks you throwing a pillow at him is morning exercise.
He does. Yeah.
Because you do it routinely.
Yeah. He actually runs, like when I throw the body pillow at him, he actually runs so that it lands on top of him. And then he uses that as an vantage point to attack me further. Well, he's trying to drag me out of bed. It's like, you little shit. So, what are we doing today? Oh, yeah. First of all, Minnesota passed the mini marijuana law yesterday in the Senate by 1 vote. Now they got to iron out the details, but on August 1st, it's going to be legal to have between 1.5 to 5 pounds at home, have 8 plants, grow your own, sell it to each other, and legal to smoke it in public or whatever.
That's awesome.
The Republicans were all bent out of shape because we don't have any way for officers to tell if somebody is loaded on marijuana. Well, you never did. You didn't before the law passed. So what's the difference after the law passed?
One thing, you don't have reasonable suspicion until they're actually driving weird.
Right. And you know what they're going to do now? They're going to give all the cops that course in how to recognize a marijuana in a person that's on marijuana, right? And the cops are going to have another reason to pull people over, and they're going to insist that you're stoned on marijuana, and they're going to do a blood test, which apparently takes sometimes 6 months to come back. So they can actually charge you, and you have a felony on your record for, I don't know, it's not a felony anymore. It's going to be like DWI is some kind of felony. Anyway, it's going to be on your record for 6 months until you can defend yourself, which costs many thousands of dollars. And we're going to have a problem with that.
Well, of course, a couple of things. Just remember, when you get pulled over for whatever reason, if they ask for it, in most states, you have to give them your ID, like your driver's license and insurance, maybe registration, depending on what state it is. And after that, shut the fuck up. Don't talk to the police. You will only dig your hole deeper.
Yeah, well, they can pull you out of the car and give you these tests that they've been trained in that are supposed to recognize whether or not you're marijuana impaired.
Now, what do the rules? Like with alcohol tests, you can refuse to take those weird tests they give you, where you have to walk a straight line and touch your nose and all that. And you can even refuse the beside the road breathalyzer test.
Not in Minnesota. If you do, you get a suspended license, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, see, Minnesota needs to get its act together. No.
Yeah.
But, at any rate, just don't say anything. Don't talk. Just say, I'm not going to talk about that, or I'm just going to remain silent. Per the Fifth Amendment, and call a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
problem.
But anyway, by the way, I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice. This does not form an attorney-client relationship. Please call a lawyer.
Yeah, there are some states where they're employing this. Police have magical mystical powers so they can recognize marijuana intoxication, and they have fucked people over significantly over this stuff. But dispensaries, that's the legislature. They have two different bills that they have to iron out between the Senate and the House. And they have to figure out whether it's going to be 1.5 pounds or 5 pounds or 2 pounds or whatever. But then the next thing they're going to do is set up a regulatory board for manufacture and sale of marijuana in retail stores and things like that. And it's so, it's going to take a while for Minnesota to settle down and figure it all out. But we are going to expunge all of the straight marijuana possession felonies, and people's records are going to be cleaned up, and people are going to be released from jail in some cases. And it's going to be kind of cool. So I'm really happy. From Nixon's war on drugs starting in 1970 to now, we have not made any progress until yesterday. And I am kind of...
Well, that's excellent. I'm happy for you Minnesotans.
Yeah, it's about fucking time. Now they have to start working on allowing therapists to use psychedelics. That's our next step, because that is a big step. So anyway, okay, pre-sup, Scott.
Well, I've been interested in people's critiques of presuppositionalism, and I've been reading the book. And if you can get a copy, you might have to check it out of a library. You might have to look at a used book retail shop, if they even exist anymore. I say retail shop, a used book resale shop. Maybe even, I don't know if do y'all have half price books in Minnesota?
Yes, I was there Thursday night at
Awesome.
Half Price Books. Yeah.
But I was able to find, just through a dealer via Amazon, a copy of Classical Apologetics by R.C. Sproul, the late R.C. Sproul, who is a reformed apologist, meaning he's a Calvinist. And what he does is and this is a great summary of the two kinds of apologetics. The one that R.C. Sproul engaged in was evidentialism, where via arguments for God and such, and mostly his was philosophical arguments, not the like evidence for the resurrection or minimal facts or anything like that. He provided his arguments and defense of Christianity, but then he did a critique of presuppositionalism, and I thought it was very interesting to see a Christian apologist going up against another Christian apologist. One being evidential, the other being presuppositional. And the interesting thing is, the argument really kind of boiled down between R.C. Sproul, a difference between Calvinism and hyper-Calvinism. His basic critique is that presuppositionalists are hyper-Calvinists. In other words, they're not just Calvinists, but they're extreme Calvinists. But that's an aside. But what I'm reading in this, it amounts to a 180-page critique. And right now I'm reading the chapter called The Starting Point. And the one observation I've made about presuppositional apologetics is it really is ridiculous. I mean, I'm debating whether I should even read any more of presuppositional apologetics, because two things are evident. Number one, it's just a bare assertion. They say that in order for you to even use logic, that you have to accept the existence of God.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just an assertion. It's ridiculous. There's no proof to it. But then only God can show you that. You only by believing in God can you use logic and reason.
Yeah, and that is a good segue into what we're going to be talking about today.
Right. And also that is ridiculous. And if you believe that kind of circular reasoning, and of course there's the other circular reasoning is that I know God because the Bible, the Word of God reveals Him, and you can only know God if the Word of God reveals Him to you. And I know God because of the Word of God. I believe the Word of God because the Word of God says it's the Word of God. That whole dynamic of circular reasoning that they try to make sound like a good thing, the presuppositionalists. So
Yeah.
there's that kind of circular bare assertion kind of thinking, which is just cultish. But then you realize a whole lot of Christianity, even mainstream Christianity, is cultish in that way. There are many churches that believe that very thing. So it just made me realize if you're into Christianity, you're cultish. I believe we have James Apperson waiting in the sidelines here.
Oh my God, he woke up. How about
James
that?
Apperson, we did not mean to ignore you, dude.
Anyway, Scott, do you recognize the book I have here on the
I
screen?
noticed. I'm very thrilled. Yes, this is a great. It's a good read, but yeah, it gives you a very concise critique of classical apologet. Well, it's not a critique of classical apologetics because that's what he pushes, but it gives you two concise summaries of those two fields of Christian apologetics. My other observation was that they believe, or presuppositionalists will believe that you just ain't right in the head.
Yeah.
And in other words, the wisdom, the foolishness of God is greater than the wisdom of man. That kind of thinking. In other words, there's something you non-believers just aren't getting, and you can't get it until God reveals it to you, and He reveals it to you through the Word of God. But because you are fallen and your way of thinking is darkened by Satan, and you're a fallen creature, you just can't grasp it, and you can't even use logic and reason, and in many cases, the strange thing is, even R.C. Sproul believes that is true to a certain degree. That whereas Cornelius Van Til believed that that you can't grasp it, you're unable to. R.C. Sproul disagreed with the "you're not able to." You can't grasp. He thinks that Christian or non-Christians are capable of using logic and reason, but they don't want to follow the truths that it naturally leads to.
Right.
And so it's a matter of will, not a matter of can't.
But they're using logic and reason, so obviously they believe in God, because logic and reason wouldn't be possible without God, right?
Yeah, but you don't want to believe in God. Well, presuppositionalists, well, no, they believe we're just incapable. Our minds are too dark, and we're just not right. We can't come to the right conclusions or whatever. And their only job is to shut our mouths because we're spreading nonsense. But
Yeah.
So I went out with this lady from Kentucky, and all she'd ever say to me is, "You ain't right. You ain't right."
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah,
then very, very distracting during sex. You ain't right. You ain't right. It's like, what? Okay, what do you want?
okay, DeFreak, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking about there. How did they? But anyway, R.C. Sproul, he just believes that we are not wanting to believe it, so therefore we don't, even though our logic and reason leads to it. In other words, he's saying, I'm right, you just don't want to accept it. In other words, something's wrong with you.
It's called gaslighting.
Yeah, gaslighting. And so, and I will, I've always accepted R.C. Sproul. He's Calvinist, Reformed. That's a mainline kind of Christianity. Even the mainline Christians are cults.
Well, sure they are.
Or shall we say, they think like a cult, and they're acting like a cult. They're just nicer at dinner parties, So it's all bullshit. And I know you believe that, but it's just got me wondering, should I even study presuppositionalism anymore? Because it's got a basis of bullshit. So anyway, and how are you gonna talk to somebody who thinks that you're essentially spiritually retarded, that there's something existentially wrong with you? Like you're a bad computer program.
Isn't that like gaslighting? Kind of.
Yes, that is gaslighting.
Yeah.
So, not going to have anything to do with it.
Christian and non-Christian thinkers alike, being human, have found no starting point but in the human subject. And then he apparently says, no, we go to God instead, right? So you pick God instead. But this is very much related to King Crocoduck and his philosophy and my philosophy of naturalism, which I pick a starting point just like they do. And my starting point is methodological naturalism, right? So how am I justified in just picking a starting point out of the blue, right? How do you justify that? Well, you justify it by the results, basically. Like you pick an assumption, you have some something that you're concerned about, and then you create an assumption, and then you run that assumption against all the points that you're concerned about and all the things that you can observe. And if it comes out consistent rather than a contradiction, then you can have you can either prove that assumption, or you can have some faith in the assumption, right? And that's kind of how methodological naturalism works. Is that clear? So you have the assumption. It doesn't matter if it's a fucking assumption, okay? If the assumption is consistent in all respects, then that lends support to that assumption.
Mm.
And there are certain logical arguments where you create an assumption and you can actually prove something with the premises, basically, that it is consistent and logically valid. So it's a perfectly viable means of making logical arguments. Of course, with induction and things like that, you can never be 100% certain, but you can lend support to your assumption. And my position is that all humans are methodological naturalists in their everyday life, and they have been ever since they popped out their mamas. And it has worked for them all through their lives, or they would be dead.
Right.
One or the other. So the proof is in the not deadness pudding. The not deadness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, this book is available on Amazon in Kindle for $9.99, and I bought it. So I bought it while you were talking about it, Scott. I do that. You know why? I have one click.
You have one click. One click's the best.
One click is
one
the
click.
best.
Oh God, I gotta check my bank account and see if I've got $9.99 in it.
Oh, it'll let you know. It'll let you know.
It'll let you know. It'll let you know with an overdraft fee. That's how it'll let you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, if I get a little more energy in me, I may read on about the presuppositionalists, and it just kind of struck me as funny as the guy who was critiquing presuppositionalism was just as guilty of I don't know what you would call it. What kind? I don't. I don't know if it's a logical fallacy, but it just just assuming that you're that non-believers that you're trying to reach are flawed human beings. I know they believe everybody's a sinner, but to say that your mind is more messed up than my mind because you don't believe in my Jesus is just it's just silly. You can't deal with somebody like that. And yeah, it's called circular reasoning, deconverted man.
And speaking of two,
Samo says we should talk about precept sometime.
yeah,
But I know you wanted to go on and talk more. But any excuse to get Silas Funk in here with us is great. So yeah.
So can you guys imagine going? Go ahead.
Speaking of atheists who just don't want to believe, Deconverted Man
Damn
had,
atheists.
yes, stopped over to Captive Desk for a wonderful interview that I think is very much worth watching. And everybody should watch that, and I've linked it in the description. And Deconverted Man does a really good, just an excellent job of talking about his deconversion. So, and I thought it was great. I was quite impressed with that interview, as I am with most interviews that Captive Desk does. But this one was particularly wonderful, I thought. So,
do you have Simus's email address?
I deny.
So you don't have his email address?
Deny. I plead the fifth.
Oh, well, there you go. See?
Yeah.
Always plead the fifth.
I have to talk to my attorney, Scott.
Why do we have
earlier in the show? What did you say? You said get your attorney.
Get your attorney. Yeah, I'm never gonna be opposed to anybody wanting to get their attorney.
Yeah.
Pleading the fifth has been a good.
We could do a pre-sup thing at some point, but that's not what I wanted to do this one.
That's not what you want to do today. Okay. Well, darn it.
Fair.
Simus, send Speed your email address so we can contact you and set up a. And Speed, what's your email address?
My attorney said it was okay for me to admit that I do have Simus's Funk. Simus Funk.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have his email? Okay. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Yep. See, I think we've missed our chance to have Simus on the show.
Yeah. Okay. So, James, you wanted to say something, and I have to stop over and say hi to my son and get some more nicotine lozenges. So I'll be back in a minute.
All right. Sounds good.
I'll be listening.
All righty. So the first thing I was going to say is that pleading the fifth, if you think about it, that's a Christian value because that's what Jesus did when he went in front of Pontius Pilate, right? He's like, Jesus, is this stuff true? Are you really claiming to be the king of the Jews that plans to overthrow Caesar? And Jesus is like, I ain't saying, right? Like, I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you.
That's for you to say, not me.
That's for you to say. Not me. You said it. I didn't. Oh.
You're so smart. You come to the conclusion.
Right. So that's always been fun. Those lies of omission that nobody holds against Jesus because he's special. So I just got done writing all about this stuff. I had no idea what topic we were going to be on today. And,
well, I got incensed when I was reading the, that information about presuppositionalism. And so this isn't even the main topic. It's just what I had to get off my chest is that if you're thinking along those lines that other people are somehow less than you, somehow not right in the head, unable to reach logical conclusions because they're not believers, then you're in a cult. You're cultically thinking. You've surrendered your intellect to people who want to control you, and that's just a bad thing.
Sure. Imagine building your worldview with the assumptions that Christians generally build into their ideas. So one of those assumptions is that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-wise. Okay, many assumptions, all-loving, right? And that he made this world for us. And if you really believe that, then you have every reason to go ahead and sample every mushroom in the forest, every plant that grows in any field, because a all-knowing, all-wise, all-loving being who made this world for us and dropped us into it wouldn't be so irresponsible, wouldn't be so much of a bad parent that needs to have their kids taken away by child protective services, would not let poisonous things grow in our world without letting us know exactly which things are and aren't poisonous. Would not do that to us, right? And so if you have faith, if you build your worldview with faith, and that is how you navigate the world, you are not going to live long, like Mike said. You're going to say, oh, well, look at this neat looking plant that the Lord has put here for us humans because the world is all about us. You're going to eat it and you're going to die, right?
Or at
So
least gets debilitating diarrhea.
yeah, you may just suffer horribly.
Yeah.
Oh, but then mushrooms, consider mushrooms, right? Some
Consider
of them,
the mushrooms of
like
the forest.
the fake morel, I think, which is deadly poisonous, which looks like a
Mhm.
morel, and one mushroom
Mhm.
looks like an. I mean, why did God do that? Is that by design? God designed everything, right?
They say God even designed flesh-eating bacteria and herpes and Ebola and
Ooh, I
those other
love
wonderful things. Yeah.
flesh-eating bacteria are wonderful. I'm a fan.
You're a fan of flesh-eating bacteria?
Yep, they're so good at what they do.
They are so good at debunking Christianity.
Yeah.
That's what I love about flesh-eating bacteria.
Yeah, and what's up with fucking licking toads, God? What the fuck? Like, I mean, everybody, every kid's gonna pick toad up and lick it, and some of them are poisonous, or some of them make you small.
Yeah.
You've been reading Alice in Wonderland again.
What's up, God? Why'd you do that? Fucking lick a toad and fucking, oh my God. I don't know. I can't apologize for God. Is that what apologetics is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Basically apologizing for God.
Apologetics is when you take something that isn't right and try to soften the edges and make it seem right. Make it come right. That's apologetics. So DeFreak says the Earth is a place where good and evil exist at the same time. So okay, DeFreak, we could just grant that and say, why would your God create so much evil? Like, what is even the point to that? And then blame us for the evil he created? Come on.
Yeah, we did that part with our free will. God just gave us free will and we misused it and we created.
Yeah, I remember doing it. In fact, I remember creating earthquakes from plate tectonics. I remember creating tornadoes in trailer parks. I remember creating all kinds of plagues and viruses and flesh-eating bacteria and yep, I did all that because I was all sinful and shit and decided to do it one morning.
Anyway. Okay. So King Crocoduck noticed that we reviewed his video. And he said that there were some nuanced things that both sides got wrong. So I'm hoping that he is going to come in and straighten us out a little bit.
Okay.
On realism and stuff. But anyway, I thought maybe we'd listen to the beginning of this because I kind of want to get into this a little bit. But, this idea is science a social construct, right? It's kind of what we're talking about. And there's this whole group of thinkers that are like you describe them as social armchair philosophers that are onto this thing, and they came up with the stuff he had a problem with is where they were saying there has to be a feminist science and there has to be Ethiopian science and there has to be and that basically white power and male supremacy somehow came up with this objective view of reality that is somehow fundamentally flawed, has to be torn down and looked at. And he reads some of the words that they're saying, and that's kind of what they're saying. I mean, it's like, but like I asked Leo in a conversation, and he refused to answer. how would that affect how we think about cell membranes, right? And I had a point, basically. If we're talking about science, there's a couple of different ways that we can talk about it. Okay. So we have a body of science, if you can imagine that, that would be all of our textbooks, papers, our current understanding of the natural world, right? And so that would be a descriptive body of science, which is up here on the in the green part, right? So we have a descriptive body of science, and they're claiming that that implies some sort of a worldview. Well, you could do a yes and a no on that, right? Does it? But we're looking at, we're looking at the world here. We're looking at all these individual things that we find in the world, and we come up with descriptions. Well, if I'm talking about science, okay, as a descriptive body of what we think of the natural world, and I ask you, do we have is our view of cell membranes a social construct? That is a perfectly fucking valid question that you are going to have to answer if you believe that science is flawed because it is a social construct. Now, if you're not saying that, then what the hell are you saying? If you're just saying that, it has to be, so we have to have human beings do science, right? So it has to be a social construct because human beings do it. Well, so we have human beings, right? And they're looking at this natural world, and that's what we call science. Well, we fucking know that. Okay, we know we're human, and we can't get out of that, right? We can't escape the fact that we're human. So we know that. But now the idea behind an objective view of reality is that we are trying to shoot for this God's eye view. Now, they're humans, and there could be frogs, and there could be some alien intelligence, that is totally different to us. They only have a sense of smell. They work with pseudopodia like amoebas. They're totally different than us, and they have, and they're looking at the same reality, and they're going to come up with their view of reality. Well, if we both look at cell membranes and we try to figure out what cell membranes are, what is going to be different about our objective view of cell membranes is what I'd like to know, based whether we're aliens or humans or whether we're some super omniscient God's totally objective God's eye view. Can you imagine what would be different? What would be different is what I want to know.
That's a good question.
If nothing's different, then science isn't a fucking social construct. Because when I say science, I'm talking about the body of science. I'm not talking about the act of doing science. And I will fully admit that there has been bias in the past several hundred or 500 years in performing the act of science, and we've come up with bad conclusions. But as far as biology, molecular biology, and chemistry are concerned, it's very hard to see how it being a social construct could have got something wrong.
Well, I guess we're going to have to look for book recommendations by somebody who advocates science as a social construct, and just see what they say about that.
Well, this Crocoduck guy kind of talks about a bit of it. So
yeah, but anyway, he's and that's fine. He provides a critique of it, but until we know what somebody is saying from their own point of view, from that point of view,
well,
we're not going to be able to critique Crocoduck's critique very well.
He actually reads what they say, so
well,
he's
true.
Reading some of the stuff that they've said, but not in this first video, but in later videos. So there's, and I'm not sure how this whole movement has. You'll see who the hell is that crazy French creationist who sounds like he's just the biggest intellectual fucking condescending asshole of all time. It's somebody else. I remember his name. He's always talking with the creationists, and he's intelligent design is his thing, and he sits in an armchair and he sounds just so full of himself you want to kill him. What the hell is his? Oh shit.
You're talking
Okay,
about starts with a K.
French French intelligent design. I could ask ChatGPT, but let's see.
You may be thinking of Jesus.
I think I know who you're talking about. I can't remember the name of the.
Oh, let's see. Okay, we have William Dembski, but that's not him. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah, you think they would have popped him up right away because he's all over the place. Somebody out there in chat, please help me. He had this like video where him and three other philosophers were talking, sitting in armchairs and talking about intelligent design and all that shit. Oh, let's see. I wonder if I typed in condescending, if that would pop it up.
Condescending, intelligent design prick.
I mean, isn't that all of them? I mean, we're not really narrowing the field here.
Oh, this guy is so bad. The condescension drips from his armchair.
Well,
I'm thinking Dennis Prager. Hell if I know.
Well, one of the worst isn't French, but remember Kyle Butts? He's like one of the worst intelligent designer. Of course, he may be more like young Earth creationist.
Yeah.
There's the philosophy of science guy. Looks like Stewart from in Mad TV or in Living Color or whatever. Stewart. What was his name? Gosh darn it.
Michael McDonald?
No.
I wonder if let me try to type this in the chat GPT and see what it says about this question. Oh, let's see. I'm sorry, but it's not clear what you're asking. Okay, fuck you. Not happening. No.
In fact, I'm picturing the guy, but I cannot picture his freaking name.
Yep. Yeah, he is just so, and I'm just drawing a blank on it. Like there are some people I find so abhorrent that I can never think of their names because my mind covers it up with like teddy bears and fucking rainbows and candy corns. And
that's fair. Protective reflex. Could it be Meyer or Lennox or Behe?
Nope, none of those. I think Behe might have been in that discussion, but it was okay. Oh God, we'll find it, but maybe we'll play a little of this video. So we are open-minded to freak, very open-minded. Feel free to cover it. Okay, Deconverted Man, I posted a tricky question in the community section of my YouTube channel.
Now, Sean McDowell had a guy on there who was, quote unquote, a French atheist becomes a Christian, Guillaume Bignon.
Nope. Oh, let's see. French intelligent design philosophers. Maybe he isn't French. Maybe I got it because I can't tell the difference. One European, blends into another. I don't see Europeans. Uh-oh. Did I say that out loud?
Yes, you did. Luckily, I wasn't paying
attention,
attention, so I don't know what you're saying.
Okay.
Well, see, I was looking for that dude, but I don't know how to search for him. I think we need to quit obsessing over a name we cannot find and keep moving.
We'll keep moving. Okay, so I'm going to play a little bit of this video and we'll get into it here.
About the nature of scientific inquiry to be deeply unconvincing. But before I can unveil the positive argument, which I have christened the naturalist nuke, I must first develop the philosophical groundwork that the argument rests upon. And that is the aim of this video, to assemble the core of the nuke. The motivation for this video series came from the political scientist, Christy Winters, who created 3 videos objecting to the content of Is Science a Social Construct? I have made an introductory video discussing the specific context of our dispute a few days prior to the release of this video. It is advised that the viewer watch that video before coming to this one. Before I begin developing my philosophy of science, I want to remind the audience that very few stances in philosophy can properly be regarded as unassailable. You can put three philosophers in the same room, and you won't even be able to get them to agree that there are three philosophers in the same room. That being said, philosophical projects aren't merely hopeless exercises in navel-gazing, or at least they don't have to be. There can be immense benefit in clarifying how one organizes one's conception of a topic, even if no one else in the world can agree, either with this person or with each other, on every last detail. It doesn't really matter to me if you find my arguments unconvincing. If I have provoked you into thinking more seriously about these topics, then I've succeeded in my aims. Unfortunately, for the purposes of this video, I cannot offer a comprehensive exposition of my philosophy of science. Time simply doesn't permit me to rigorously justify every last proposition that I make, which opens my perspective up to criticisms that might otherwise have been avoided had I offered a more complete picture of my opinions. There will be videos in which I do more than merely offer a sketch of what it is that I believe, and systematically develop the entirety of my thought on these matters, but this is not that video. I therefore implore the viewer to apply the principle of charity when evaluating what I have to say in the next few sections, and try to imagine how I might answer your objections before posting them in the comments. Given how long I've been grappling with these ideas, chances are that I've already considered the objections and that I do have answers to them, and you have my word that I will address them all in follow-up videos. With that out of the way, let's...
Okay, but just a minute here.
I like that so much. I might use it.
David Berlinski. There he is.
There he is.
Yep, I think everybody knows about this dude. So anyway.
What about him?
That's the guy I was talking about, David Berlinski.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not the guy I was thinking about.
Yeah, there's a picture of him. He's in the audience of this video. So anyway, yeah. Okay, Nuking. Okay. Did you have a comment there, James? On King? No? Nothing?
No. I've interrupted you a lot today, and I apologize for that. These kinds of interactions are like a choreography, right? And I think my timing's a little bit off today, so I'm going to be more quiet now.
No, I strongly encourage you two fuckers to interrupt me. Damn it. Don't feel bad. Don't apologize. Okay.
Fair.
Okay, let's see if we can get into the meat of this, because he mentioned something here I think that's pretty important, and it kind of has something to do with precept.
Start by establishing my view of the relationship between science and philosophy.
There we go.
Traditionally, philosophy has enjoyed the status of first knowledge, as an activity associated with the formulation of the grounds on which the understanding of reality, as well as the justification of knowledge claims, can be based. This status is one in which epistemology and ontology, which respectively concern themselves with the nature of knowledge and existence, are developed prior to the doing of any science, and this is the approach that Christy Winters endorses.
So the first question is, what exists? And science is out there to produce reliable knowledge about what exists. And what you think exists will determine what you investigate. And therefore, if you don't think that there is any social reality, well, this is going to influence your research agenda. But we'll get on to bias in a second. After you, well, not in conjunction with knowing or thinking that you know or wanting to explore how things exist, what exists, the next step is, how do we know about it? And this is where science comes in. And the fundamental problem that King Crocoduck makes in his video is that he skips epistemology and he goes right to methodology. And I'll explain methodology in a second. Epistemology is the process by which we can know about the thing we think exists. So your ontology, what you think exists, will influence the kind of questions you ask. What approach to epistemology you adopt in trying to answer those questions, the methods you use, and how you interpret your results. All science is a process of knowledge production. That's what science is. It is a method for producing knowledge. And if you look at it within that system or within that definition, it automatically becomes a social construct.
Okay, so she's saying basically the same thing. Because humans do it, it has to be a social construct. Okay, but there's kind of a weird inversion here. Now I have been saying, no, that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about science. What I'm talking about is this this attempt or this ideal of becoming objective and getting an objective view of reality. But now what they say that, you start with ontology and then you go to epistemology and then you figure out the methods of science. No. When you are born, when you are just an embryo, okay, you do not start with ontology and then figure out what your epistemology is, and then you start to crawl around the room. You start to crawl around the room first. So you do methodological naturalism first. That is your first kind of epistemology. Do you guys have any comments on that? That's how it works. So philosophers want to say, oh no, you have to base science in all of these, ontology and epistemology. And of course, they never get. You spend so many decades, centuries on ontology and epistemology that you never get around to talking about science. Well, that isn't what it's when a baby learns to crawl. That isn't what we do in our everyday life. We do methodological naturalism in our everyday life. Every single one of us do it successfully. Comments? Comments?
One thing I want to acknowledge, J Mike has joined us in the side chat, at least for a moment or two. So welcome, J Mike. And let's go ahead and get a definition of knowledge here, because one observation is she said science is knowledge production.
Yeah. But
I wonder what her definition of knowledge is, because using the simplistic, and of course I'm being simplistic, I recognize, is knowledge is justified true belief, but all you have to do is justify it for it to be knowledge. So science, I think, leads us to a particular kind of knowledge, distinct from others who didn't apply a scientific method to gain knowledge. So I wonder if her definition is a little needs more revision and what's the word where you kind of are more careful with the define. Well, never mind. It needs revision or something, because how you view knowledge, how you define knowledge may affect your view of science and your view of not all knowledge is scientific knowledge. And,
right.
And
so, go ahead.
To me, it almost seems like science is a particular way of justifying certain kinds of belief. Like I form a hypothesis, which is the belief that, let's say, things fall at the same exact rate due to gravity, no matter the volume, no matter the weight or whatever. Well, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, no matter the weight, things fall at the same rate. I may have accumulated some measurements to justify that belief, but is it scientific yet? Has my theory reached the level of scientific knowledge? And maybe only after going through an intensive scientific process can it really be known as scientific knowledge. That's assuming that a hypothesis isn't quite scientific knowledge. So anyway, I'm just kind of pondering out loud here. So if I'm not making sense, you're right. If I am making sense, maybe you are right. I don't know. But do you see where I'm going with this?
Going down the epistemology rabbit hole is one possibility. Another one is cognitive neuroscience, where they'll talk about knowledge, and you start to try to separate this out, right? And we have things like factual memory, episodic memory, we remember episodes in our life. We have skillful knowledge, knowledge of how to ride a bike, how to walk across the room, how to move our muscles, how to take multiple senses and combine them into a idea of an object or whatever. So from the neuroscientific aspect, what we're talking about is, like, I like to separate things into three realms, right? We have R1 here, which is reality one. It's a reality that every human being operates in. And this is sort of it's a common sense methodology that we use to live our lives. Like, if you want to find out why the bread is all gone and you just bought a loaf of bread, what do you appeal to? How do you figure that out? And we use this sort of common sense. Or if you walk into a room and you don't want to trip over the chair, you walk around the chair. There's all this common sense knowledge that we accumulate. And then what has happened with humans is we've taken that and we turned it into science, which is R2. So we've tried to clean up our methodology, and we've tried to be very, very careful about creating theories and trying to categorize facts and test them and find out, how to falsify certain theories and all of that. So that's all of R1 or R2, right? And then there's metaphysics 1, which I call naive metaphysics, which is outside of that. And metaphysics 1 would come up with a model for all of reality. Like, for instance, you could be a brain in a vat. Okay. You could be a brain in a vat with a scientist who is some alien reptile lizard, or you could be a brain in a vat with a scientist who was an 18th century professor at Oxford who's wearing a red lab coat. So anyway, there's the problem is that R2 and R1 are underdetermined by any metaphysical model. Okay. So when you get out into ontology, it's like, if you were a brain in a vat, it would be no different than if you just accepted the natural cosmos. There's no way to tell from within this bubble which one of these M1 models that you've created in your little head is true. So it's underdetermined. So what they're claiming is that, we have to create these M1 models, and we have to say, we have to be skeptical about R2 and R1. And one of the things that King Crocoduck is going to express is that it makes no difference to him at all, whether he is a brain in a vat or not a brain in a vat, or whether he's a god that fooled himself into believing he's himself. None of that shit makes a difference with science and methodological naturalism.
Hey, just an administrative
we are
note,
in this
real
world.
quick. Randolph Richardson's having trouble seeing that outer dark red line on his device.
My God.
So could you change its color?
Pedantic.
Change the gray background.
I want to keep Randolph happy. He is the president of atheism in Canada.
I know he owns atheism in Canada.
Yeah.
So here's M1. Okay, how's that, Randolph? Picky. I can see it fine. I don't know. I got to look and see what it looks like on YouTube here. Let me see. Ooh. Oh my God. You're right, Randolph. You can't see that fucker.
Interesting.
I apologize. Okay. It's so important to have chat feedback from chat. Thank you. Anyway, but that is a real simplistic model of all of this stuff, right? What we're talking about, when we're talking about most of the body of knowledge that we have as human beings is in R1. It's this cognitive neuroscience. We have skills about navigating in the universe, about feeding ourselves, living our lives, having offspring, keeping track of where the offspring are, changing their diapers, whatever we have to do. It's all done in R1. And R2 is an endeavor where we try to develop this God's eye view of, let's see, it's a little bit up. This thing, where we try to take this as objective as we can get. But of course, if we get objective out to the point where we start talking about ontology and brain in a vat and all that, we've gone too far. We don't have to fucking go that far, because this is a closed system. R2 is a closed system. And to our knowledge, we have never found anything outside of that system called supernatural. Okay, this is natural, and we haven't found anything supernatural. Until we do, who the fuck cares? Right? Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
It makes sense. And Randolph wants to clarify, he wasn't really asking for himself. He was wanting to make sure everybody could see. And once again, that's the reason he's the president of atheism in Canada. He thinks about the people.
Yes. Yeah. When I get a memo from the president of atheism in Canada, I take it seriously and I change it to white. Random. I promise I will not use that red color no more. I'll get rid of it. Or I'll try not to. I probably will. To be honest, I probably will use it again.
You're using it right now for the word human.
Oh, fuck. What if I do this? How about that? See it now, motherfuckers? Okay. I'm going to go on with this video.
From these clips, it's evident that Christie takes science, which she correctly characterizes in methodological terms, to be dependent upon a prior set of epistemological commitments, in which it has decided how the objects of scientific investigation can be known. This in turn depends on a prior set of ontological commitments, in which it has decided what sorts of things can be said to exist, and therefore be proper objects of scientific investigation. And crucially, since it is human beings who agree, via authoritative consensus, what sorts of things exist and how they can be understood, then the methodological practices which constitute science are, fundamentally, a product of agreements between humans. Science emerges from a philosophical foundation, and the philosophical foundation is socially constructed. Therefore, science is socially constructed. My fundamental error, according to Christie, is that I went straight to methodology without first talking about epistemology and ontology. This, in her view, betrays my ignorance of the philosophy of science, an ignorance which she takes to be common among natural scientists. Had I understood that scientific methodology lies upon a philosophical foundation, I surely would never have tried to argue that science isn't a social construct. If only I weren't ignorant about the fact that philosophy was invented thousands of years before science. Indeed, that philosophers practically invented science. Silly me. So how am I to respond to this? Well, first, I'm going to start by rejecting philosophy as a foundation for scientific practice. This is not a rejection of philosophy per se, just a rejection of the role that Christie and others like her assign to it. As a naturalist...
Oh, hang on a second here. I want to check this out. Sociologist, psychologist. Psychology is just applied biology. Biology is just applied chemistry, which is just applied physics. Oh, hey. I didn't see you guys all the way to mathematicians. That's pretty cool cartoon, actually. Epistemological philosophers are holding it all up. Anyway, it's kind of key that he rejects that. And that is very much the same as my saying that we find ourselves in the middle, starting out with this R1 common sense epistemology. We all do. And that's where we start. We don't, and that relates to precept, right? They say, oh, you can't ground your epistemology unless you pull God out of your ass. So it's the same thing. You see that? So these so-called atheists who are saying, oh, you have to figure out ontology and epistemology before you can start doing science or methodological naturalism are doing the same fucking thing as the preceptors.
Yeah.
And anyway, we'll move on.
I do not accept philosophy's claim to the special status traditionally allocated to it. I do not recognize the legitimacy of the epistemologists, the ontologists, or the metaphysicians who presume it to be their job to set the agenda for scientific practice prior to any input by the scientists themselves. This is not to say that epistemology, ontology, and metaphysics have no role in science. On the contrary, I think they're essential. But rather that the relationship between the philosopher and the scientist is not, as Christie suggests, unidirectional, with a decidedly philosophical foundation. I think that the relationship between science and philosophy, at least when these activities are done well, is mutually interactive. In other words, I think that metaphysics, ontology, and epistemology should fundamentally be informed by the content.
Okay, and now something that may be missed is that okay, science is done by human beings, so it's a social construct. Well, so is philosophy, ontology, and epistemology, all done by humans. So also social construct, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is science kind of has this whole thing called empiricism
Sure.
and common sense. Does philosophy? Does ontology and epistemology? Epistemology would have a good basis if you looked at cognitive neuroscience as your starting point and you started straightening out these different kinds of knowledge that Scott was talking about. But anyway, I think that's important. But he sees this basically interactive view of philosophy and science, and that has to be correct. I mean, we didn't, ontology and epistemology, we didn't just start doing that before we started investigating the natural world. We would be dead if we did it that way, in that order. We went back and forth.
Sure. So one idea that keeps popping into my head as we're having this discussion. If there was one person in the world and one person only, let's say it was a world where they didn't need anybody else, right? It's everything is safe and everything is, and they start off incredibly intelligent, let's just say, theoretically, right? And they start figuring out the world, right? What seems safe to eat, what seems safe to drink. Let's say they dodge the bullet and never, or maybe it's a safe world and nothing's poisonous, right? Eventually, maybe they teach themselves, maybe they create language on their own. It doesn't necessarily take 1,000 people to create a language. In theory, if a person is smart enough and has enough time, let's say they're going to live to be 1,000,000 years old in this perfect world, but they're all by themselves. Nobody else exists there. Eventually, they would create language. Eventually, they would create the idea of writing and math. Eventually, right? Eventually, they start doing science. In this world, could we honestly say that science has fuck all to do with social systems and social interactions and interdependencies? The answer is no. Of course not. There's only one person in that world, but he could still do science.
Yeah, the thing about creating language if there were no other people is a little contentious, but
no, I think that he could. He'd be like, okay, I want to be able to make notes about
record.
what I'm. I want to be able to record my observations. But in order to do that, I have to have symbols that represent ideas, right?
Hieroglyphics, yeah, and yeah, it's yeah. So I think that would happen, but I think I remember some raging fights over that among philosophers. So that's why I said it was contentious.
Well, it need not be, but I understand that they would make it contentious.
Yeah. Well, if he lived for a long time, your ideal human here would live for thousands of years.
No, like 1 billion. Like he's just effectively he's a jellyfish. He's got those kind of genetics where he'll just technically never die unless something crushes him. And it's a very safe world. It's made out of like Nerf. Everything is super soft and spongy. There's no plate tectonics. There's no tornadoes. It's an ideal world where nothing will ever kill him, right? And he's super intelligent. Eventually, and he doesn't even have to worry about anybody feeding him, right? Everything's edible and delicious, right, and healthy. He will live to be 1 billion years old in this theoretical world. He would still eventually develop science.
Want to build a modern model of the Starship Banner?
Fun.
Okay, we got a Starship. We got a fucking Star Trek nerd here.
Yeah, love it.
Okay. Yes.
Like the world that Rick made for Beth.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, proceed.
Of our best empirical theories, which result from the application of scientific methodology, and that the role of these philosophical modes of thought, when applied fruitfully, is to help facilitate scientific practice via the clarification and reorganization of concepts relevant to those theories. The result is a positive feedback loop in which scientific methodology tests models, philosophy helps to refine the models by clarifying and reorganizing their attendant concepts, scientific methodology then tests those revised models, and philosophy responds by revising its epistemic, ontological, and metaphysical concepts in light of the revised model's results. And for reasons that I'll be developing in the next video, I think that methodology is what kicks off this entire process. We don't begin with premises about what exists and what can be known, and from them deduce a scientific program, but rather begin with methodological modes of thought, from which we organize our philosophical programs. In expressing the relationship between science and philosophy in this manner, I have essentially stated that there is nothing special about ontology and epistemology in relation to scientific methodology. These philosophical modes.
Okay, so that goes back to my complaint against most philosophy that I've read, is that they don't go to the developmental aspect of how we come to be where we are. They always start as fully formed adults, looking at the world and having language and having all of this baggage that we've accumulated over a lifetime. Rather, what I look at is what happens when a zygote, basically, having been fertilized, does its first cell division, and from there develops a brain, and starts interacting with the world and creating our epistemology in that manner. And when you look at it developmentally, it sort of shifts the focus of this whole foundationalism, that we have to have a foundation for our logic and our reason. Otherwise, we can't even begin to exist. Well, fucking bullshit. If that were the case, there would be no raccoons, no squirrels, no, animals would have never happened if we had to do it that way. So I call that the developmental approach. And it's also sort of a starting in the middle and working outward approach rather than insisting on foundationalism. So,
one thing I want to ask those people is, are beavers...
Stephanie.
Oh, hello, Stephanie. Are beavers indulging in philosophy before they decide to start building dams? Do they have to get together and have social conversations about the philosophy of gravity and chewing on wood and making trees fall and getting in the way of water and building dams? No, they don't do any of that shit.
Yeah, and there are certain like gray beavers who are dominant, or no, brown beavers who are dominant, and they take their social construct of ontology and they impress it upon the building of dams, and dams would not be dams if they were not in charge. Right.
They would be darns.
They'd be darn.
Fun.
Anyway, proceed.
Proceed.
Don't come prior to science, but in fact respond to it. Even if it were true that philosophy has historically preceded science, which, as we'll see in the next video, I don't believe to actually be the case, this would not prohibit the relationship between them from being organized in the manner that I've just described. The basic idea that the duties of the philosopher are carried out in tandem with, as opposed to prior to, the duties of the scientist has been a staple of naturalistic approaches to the philosophy of science for decades. Indeed, the most celebrated expositor of naturalized epistemology, Willard Quine, introduced the first major iteration of that program over 50 years ago when he cast epistemology in psychological terms, thus placing this formerly philosophical enterprise under the umbrella of scientific thought. Pragmatist modes of philosophical thought, which similarly reject the kind of a priori theorizing that I'm railing against, originated 100 years prior with the works of Charles Sanders Peirce. The point being, I'm not making this stuff up. It's been part of the philosophical landscape for the past 150 years. Christy Winters is not a naturalist. Her understanding of the philosophy of science is very clearly predicated, almost exclusively, on this book by Jonathan Grakes, which explicitly advocates an anti-naturalist approach. Her slides pertaining to the philosophy of science, which she used in order to develop the basis for her critique of my philosophy, are practically copy and pasted from chapter 4 of his book. This is an unusual decision because Grakes is a scholar of sports studies. He's a researcher in the politics of sports. That doesn't make him an illegitimate source for a person's understanding of the philosophy of science, but it certainly is an unusual one. Ordinarily, if one wishes to understand the philosophy of science, it's helpful to consult with the works of, well, philosophers. For my own part, I've been highly influenced by people like Willard Quine, Charles Sanders Peirce, Susan Hack, Daniel Dennett, David Hume, Alexander Rosenberg, Karl Popper, Patricia.
Alexander Rosenberg calls himself prescribes to scientism, as I do. So he's one of the few philosophers that agree with me on that. So, and Dennett and all these guys he's mentioning, it's just like Patricia
Churchland and John Bickel. I'm not saying that a person.
This is basically these are my heroes. So I was kind of excited to hear his influence list.
Yeah, those are your heroes. I appreciate that.
Dennett, Churchland.
My heroes have always been cowboys.
The Churchlands, as I call them. There are two of them, Paul and Patricia, I think.
Philosophy of science necessarily has to be influenced by philosophers alone. There have been important figures, like Thomas Kuhn and Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who have been major influences on my own philosophy of science, despite the fact that they themselves never received degrees in philosophy. I'm just saying that it's unusual to lean so heavily on the work of a sports studies scholar when forming your own understanding of the philosophy of science, and it helps to explain why Christy was so bewildered by some of the decisions that I made in the video that she's criticizing. She seems oblivious to naturalistic accounts of science, which is embarrassing given her repeated accusation that I'm the one who's ignorant of the philosophy of science. It's like she isn't aware that naturalism, for at least the past 50 years, has been predicated upon the rejection of the statuses of ontology and epistemology as first knowledge, as something prior to the scientific activity. What I did in going straight to methodology without first sitting in an armchair and speculating about what exists and what can be known about it has been standard practice among naturalists for half a century now, and Christy might have known that and recognized its application in my video had she read more widely than just those texts, which confirm the position that she's already habituated towards. All I'm saying is, it's not a good look when your understanding of the philosophy of science is limited to the contents of an obscure work by some sports studies scholar, and then when confronted with material issuing from literature outside of the very narrow domain that you've been reading in, you mistake it for ignorance. I know that standing up on that hill gives you the impression that you can see farther than I can, Christy, but that's only because you're unfamiliar with the terrain. In any event, the manner in which I conceptualize the relationship between science and philosophy defeats this particular charge of social constructionism. According to Christy, accounts of what exists and what criteria are associated with the acquisition of knowledge, the objects of ontology and epistemology, are fundamentally a product of authoritative consensus. I, on the other hand, take these to actually be the result of the application of scientific methodology, at least when they're done well. Moreover, since I take the natural methodology that we typically associate with scientific practice to be the activity that kicks things off in this relationship, the entirety of my philosophical program becomes naturalized. I submit to you that the only things that we have any right to say exist are those things which are posited by the contents of our best empirical theories, and that the only things that we get to call knowledge are those things which at some point see application in those theories. What I've just said will require some justification, since there will inevitably be those who don't want to organize knowledge in this fashion, opting instead to abstract from some set of a priori premises pertaining either to what exists or to what can be known. Natural methodology.
Anyway, I'm not sure if we want to go any further just yet, but I like this diagram here, which kind of shows the interrelation of all these things. But I think what's missed here is my developmental R1 common sense naturalism that we all prescribe to. And we can't deny that. Because if it's something that everybody uses every day, every second of their life, how we find objects in the world, you cannot deny that by just hand waving it away, as it could be a brain in a vat.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a brain in a vat, the brain in a vat has been programmed with that natural world, and that natural world has the rules that we find. There's nothing supernatural to the guy in the vat or the brain in the vat. finds nothing supernatural because nothing supernatural is in that program.
Mm-hmm.
Where did
And
the
there we
vat
are.
come from?
We're in the vat. Yeah, that's the thing. And then there's all sorts of brain in the vat arguments that they get really wild. Like for instance, if you were a brain in a vat and the vat was in a kind of reality where it wasn't a vat like our vats, right? You would have no way of conceiving that you were a brain in a vat because you can't even conceive of what the vat would be in that outer reality. And you can get into some really interesting discussions on that. And you wouldn't know what the mad scientist was that had you in the vat and programmed you and all of that stuff. But anyway.
Not to mention, vat is just a cool word.
Yeah.
Vat. Love it.
There's that book, those those Oxford books that are simplified. They're only
simple.
about 100
Yeah.
Whatever. And they the one on reality, I think it is.
Oh,
The one
yeah.
on reality. And he addresses the brain in a vat thing and says, if you were a brain in a vat, nothing would be any different. That would be your reality, and that would be reality. Whatever that programming was would be reality. So It doesn't matter what motor ontology is.
Yeah, they're called A Very Short Introduction to, and then whatever the topic.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was a very short introduction to existence or
Reality,
yeah. A very short introduction. And it was a really good one. He managed to cover all the nuances. Is it reality? Oh, yes, it is. A very short introduction to reality. And I kicked myself in the Jan Westerhoff. Oh, maybe that's not the one I'm talking about.
I don't know. I've never kicked myself in the Jan Westerhoff before. Sounds painful.
No, yeah. Jennifer Nagel has a very short introduction to knowledge, which is also worth reading. But anyway, we've done quite a bit. So I don't know. I think I kind of said what I wanted to say.
Sometimes we just got to say something.
We just got to say something.
Sometimes we just got to.
A long time ago, I came up with this rather simple, very simple starting point. And my philosophy is very simplistic in its origins. And it ends up being mostly about scientism at the end of the day, because you find yourself, in this R1 world, right? This world of common sense, with objects and 3D space and another dimension for time. And then you proceed and you learn things about the world and you try to abstract and figure out other things. And you end up out in this scientific view, but you start here and this is all basically. And you develop in that world. And what you end up doing is becoming, let's see if I can get a pen here. I'll use white. What the hell? Okay. You are this thing, right? In this world, and you develop this R1 knowledge, okay? And you're in this outer world and you're interacting with it. And what happens is you form basically your perception of that outer world is a relationship to that world because you are a part of that world. Your mind, your consciousness, everything is a part of this world, right? And you're forming this big relationship with the outer world, okay? And in that respect, you cannot be wrong because the relationship that is knowledge of that outer world from the kind of organism you are cannot be wrong. If you were the kind of organism that had pseudopod, you were like a single cell that somehow got intelligent and you formed that relationship and you only had a sense of smell and you were smelling the world and you organized everything according to gradients of smell, okay? You would have a ontology or a model of that outer world based on that. And it would not be wrong. It couldn't be wrong because you are a part of that world. And that draws from Buddhism a little bit, that you are a part of that relationship with the world. So your knowledge of the world cannot be wrong. Your ontology cannot be wrong.
Yeah.
Is my claim. So anyway, pretty radical claim, that one.
You radical.
I'm a radical. So what else is happening? Oh my goodness. The Hotzen bird. I think we're going to do a thing with Andrew Cumming later today. So we should probably all rest up for that.
Yeah, he could just do a workout.
Yeah, there's a bird called the Hotzen that my son brought to my attention the other day. And it defies classification. And according to the New York Times, it just completely destroys the tree of life. Well, no, it doesn't really. It's just that it doesn't fit in. They're having trouble fitting it into the tree of life.
What's the name of the bird?
Hotzen, Hoatzin, I think it is. Hotzen. Hey, Hotzen. Anyway, so we have another essay, do we, James?
Or another essay.
You did it today?
No, I didn't write this one. This is one that I found on the interwebs yesterday.
Well, it's got feathers and it flies. What's so weird about it? I mean,
it's got claws on its wings, and it's got a rumen type digestive system. And when they classified, I think they related it to the Archaeopteryx, and they thought it was like, a really ancient, like a living fossil. And then when they started doing DNA analysis on it, on the mitochondria and on its genome, they had even more trouble that it created. And it looked like it broke off like 65 million years ago, right around the time the dinosaurs went extinct, from all the other lines of birds, and developed on its own all that time. So it must have been a huge branch with lots.
It's an extinct bird. Okay, sorry.
No, it's not extinct.
It's not extinct?
No, it's a living fossil. It may have been a huge branch of many, many species of birds, but it's the only one left.
Wow.
It's the only one in that lineage.
You mean we didn't find or discover it until it was too late? Wow.
Until it was too late, yeah. And it just like it's called an enigma, and there's all kinds of problems with it. We'll probably talk to Andrew a little bit about that.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's like
Hotzen.
The only problem with it is trying to figure out where to put it. Exactly how did this thing? What is its actual common ancestor? How far back does it go?
Well, yeah, because that's the thing is I would just classify it as a bird until now you tell me all that information about it. And I go, wow, maybe it's a flying creature that's not really a bird,
Yeah.
And of course, what's a bird? That's just a colloquialism for feathered things that fly, or feathered things that taste good, even though they don't fly.
There's a 1995 paper, The Structure and Function of the Digestive Tract of the Hotzen Opisthocomus hoatzen, a folivorous bird. That means it eats foliage. They love those weird names or weird words. With foregut fermentation. So it has bacteria living in its gut, kind of like a cow. So
does that mean like the foliage that they for whatever reason ate was more fibrous and harder to break down? And
yeah, they end up getting more nutrition out of the leaves than other birds because of this gut that they have with bacteria living in it. Rumen-like methanogens, which are the bacteria identified from the crop of folivorous South American bird, the Hotzen. Opisthocomus hoatzen. Anyway. And there's a bunch of papers that, anyway, we'll get into it. But what's his name? Emery Moyna, who has a pen name that he writes for AIG and wrote an article about it in 2019. How it just totally destroys evolution. And evolutionists just have to accept that it was created. God created it. It's like, okay.
or it developed through a different evolutionary path,
Right.
which is an easy explanation given what we already know.
Yeah.
You know,
That would
it's
be God created it would be out here in M1.
now surely
basically.
they've done a genetic analysis of it.
They have, and they're having trouble placing it with the genetic analysis because it's
Wow, I love that. See, that's the thing is somebody wants to go, "Ooh, that ruins your theory," but number one, that's an exciting discovery, an exciting
very exciting.
piece of knowledge to come across, and secondly, yeah, it just makes you want to know more, want to learn more.
Yeah, I want my theories ruined.
That's true. That's true. But it's not going to be ruined in favor of young Earth creationism. It's just not.
Of course not.
It's not going to happen. What we're going to find out is there's some creature in the past that is most likely surprising. Yet once we know what it is, not so surprising. Last common ancestor or something before all the other Hoatzins were created. And so do we have fossils of Hoatzin-like birds? But I guess you can't tell because of the multiple stomachs and stuff don't preserve.
Yes, we do, and they're fragmentary, and Emery Moyna complains about that. And this is one of the papers that he linked, which claims the phylogenetic relationships of the enigmatic Hoatzin resolved using mitochondrial and nuclear gene sequences. Ooh. So why is this paper claiming that the enigma has been resolved? I don't understand.
Is that the 1995 paper? Or is it more recent?
This one, I'm not sure what the date on this one is. Did they even tell you here? Oh, goddamn, they don't tell you.
So Andrew's going to talk about this, huh?
Well, no, Andrew wanted to talk about Big Bang cosmology, and he wanted to have people in. So he wanted to invite people in to the room, hopefully one at a time, to talk about Big Bang cosmology.
Gotcha. Okay.
Idea, so.
That sounds good.
And this was something that I brought up with him.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. A ruminant bird.
Yeah, so they have 4 different possible phylogenies here that kind of conflict with each other. So they're trying to place it. And let's see, do they have a conclusion to this paper?
And forgive me if I didn't listen close enough, but what was the area where its habitat was?
I'm not sure where they live right now. You'd have to look it up on the wiki. Has a pretty big article.
Okay.
They believe they came out of Africa. So, and of course, Emery Moyna has a problem with that because he believes it came out of the Ark.
It had to come out of the Ark.
Oh my God!
Oh yeah. He's getting his master's in, or he just got his master's in biology from. I think he started studying in a Christian college, and now he moved on, and he's an actual fucking biologist, and he thinks it came out of the Ark.
I'm sorry. That's just so ridiculous. If I was running a university, I'd be like, no. If your explanation for how biology works is magic man in sky does magic, you don't get your degree. You just don't get to graduate.
Because what he does is, and he's admitted to this, he just answers the questions like he knows they want to hear it. And then he just, I guess, has his finger crossed when he answers it. And he recites, Jesus did it. They were on the Ark or whatever.
Yeah, that's just another M1 or naive metaphysical model of the world that is underdetermined. You can't tell which God it was, what God is, or why he did it, or whatever the fuck. I mean, you can make up anything you want for M1 to make a model for reality, right? And you can make it work by apologizing over and over again and adding this idea and that idea. And the more knowledge we get in science about biology, the more the creationists have to make shit up to fucking, make it okay with we hopped off the Ark, all of us hopped off the Ark, on some dry hump of land somewhere after the fucking earth cracked open and the fountains of the deep blew out and fucking shot at the moon and made craters. I mean, God, people, what the fuck? It's 2023. Is that not the year we're at?
That's the year we're at.
Have we not fucking made any progress?
Well, we've gone backwards in a lot of ways.
We just done.
And mostly because of fundamentalism, too. It's just weird.
Should we review what's her name's video, Hassenfelder?
Right now?
Right now?
I haven't watched it.
Good. Well, we should probably watch it. It's going to be contentious. It's on the Hassenfelder. Let's see. That isn't what I wanted to pull up.
If it's going to be controversial, then maybe we need more preparation.
We do. Oh, my goodness. But everybody knows Sabine Hassenfelder, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, she's the world's leading science communicator in her field, so I think everybody knows who she is.
Whenever life gets you down, Mrs. Brown, and things seem hard or tough, and people are stupid, obnoxious or daft, and you feel like you've had quite enough, just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 90 miles a second, so it's reckoned the sun that is the source of all our power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral at 40,000 miles an hour in a galaxy we call the Milky Way.
Isn't that wonderful?
She's multi-talented.
I'm afraid I fell in love with it at this point when I watched this video. I must admit. And at the very end of it, that's the Monty Python song. It's like, what is the comment at the end of it? I'll link it. Let me play the end of it.
How amazingly unlikely is your birth, and pray that there's intelligent life somewhere up in space, 'cause it's bugger all down here on Earth.
There's bugger all down here on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Have you seen that before, James?
I have not seen that one before. I did know she did some music videos.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen that one before.
I've seen one or two things of her singing, but not this one.
Yeah.
So then
I'll link in the description for everybody. I sometimes I just watch it to start my day because it's just so
right.
It's such a neat song. This, it puts you in perspective. This what the fuck we really are.
Absolutely. And if there's any creationists in here, like, you should feel really, really called out right now because she talking about you, yo. She totally talking. Yeah. She's putting your stupid shit on blast.
Anyway. Okay, guys, we've been going about an hour and a half.
Yeah, yes. Maybe next time we can. Go ahead.
I just said
maybe
yes.
Maybe next time we can review the Dark Matter 25 video about the Great Flood. It was relevant to what we talked about here today.
How far back does it go?
So it's a 6-minute video, give or take, and it's 13 years ago is when he made it. It's the video that led to my deconversion, actually.
Really?
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's definitely worth looking into, just for the personal interest.
Yeah. Because before I watched that video, I honestly thought that, and this is embarrassing, right? That I honestly thought the Ark was a real thing, and it had room for all the animals, and it completely made sense. And then I watched that video, and I'm like, "Fuck."
Is that the Atheist comedy? Atheist comedy,
Yeah.
The Great Flood?
Yeah,
It's 6 minutes.
it is 6 minutes.
It is 6 minutes. And what could we do if we had 6 minutes? What could we do? What
We
is
could watch
going
it.
on with the speed? Okay.
Hey, Dad, look, we got a problem.
Damn it, Jeffrey. Always with the problems. Always with the problems. What now?
God, this whole Noah's Ark scheme that you got going, it's just not gonna work. I mean,
I know. You already told me there's not enough room for 6 million animals on the ark. That's why I told you to cut out all the different variations. Just use the bare minimum.
Yeah, but I did that, and that still leaves us with 17,400 birds, 12,000 reptiles, 9,000 mammals, 5,000 amphibians, and 2 million insects.
Huh. That's still a lot. Fuck!
Actually, God, fitting the animals on the ark is the least of our worries right now. We should be more worried about the food. You told Noah to bring any kind of food that is to be eaten. Do you have any idea how much an animal eats in 1 year? I mean, 2 elephants are going to require 365,000 pounds of food and 36,500 gallons of water.
What water, Jeffrey? It's going to be raining.
Yeah, for 40 days. What are they going to do for the other 325 days? I mean, the giraffes are going to need 54,750 pounds of food. The hippos are going to need 65,700 pounds of food. The 2 lions are going to need 16,060 pounds of meat. I mean, all that meat's going to rot. Yeah, have you thought this through?
Okay, I think I got it. What if I have Noah bring only baby animals?
Babies? Okay, God, how are we going to work that out? Do you want the baby animals to travel to Noah from all around the world? Because by the time most of them reach Noah, they're going to be adults. Or do you want all the animals to reach Noah and then coexist in the same ecosystem until they all get pregnant and have babies at the exact same time so that Noah can bring them all? God, this is ludicrous. This ain't going to work.
Okay. What if we get the animals to hibernate?
Well, even a bear can only hibernate about 100 days at a time, and they're going to be on the ark 4 times longer than that. Look, God, none of this even really matters anyway, because you said that the floodwaters are going to cover all of the mountains under the heavens by a depth of 20 feet. That's going to put the altitude of the floodwaters at 29,055 feet. All the animals are going to freeze to death. And those that don't freeze to death are going to become exhausted just from trying to breathe in an atmosphere that has 33% less oxygen, and they're going to suffocate. This is going to be disastrous, God. Disastrous. God, not even most of the sea life is going to survive.
What, Jeffrey? It's going to be covered with water. Perfect for sea life.
Are you kidding me? You're going to be changing the water temperature, the water pressure, the light filtration. Salt water is going to be mixing with fresh water. God, it's going to kill most aquatic life, too.
Huh. Okay, I see your point.
And I just thought of something else, too. Even if the animals survive the trip, well, what are they going to do when they get off the boat? The herbivores aren't going to have any vegetation to eat because it's all going to be wiped out by the flood. And the carnivores aren't going to have any animals to eat. Every time they do eat an animal, they're going to make an entire species go extinct. And that really brings me to my last point, God. 2 individuals of a species is not enough to propagate an entire species. I mean, you need at least 50 individuals of a species in order for there to be a proper amount of genetic diversity. And with only 2, I mean, you have to inbreed. And with all that inbreeding, there's going to be severe genetic defects. I mean, this is not going to work, God. We're going to have to think of something else.
Okay, Jeffrey, okay. I know what to do. I got me an idea.
Oh, good. God, good. I knew you'd come up with something. Okay, let me write this down. Hang on. Let me get my pencil. Okay, let's hear it, guys. I'm ready. What's your idea?
Magic.
Okay. So getting the animals to the ark.
Magic.
Fitting the animals on the ark.
Magic.
Getting the animals to behave.
Magic.
The food.
Magic.
The water.
Magic.
The poop.
Magic.
The freezing cold.
Magic.
The lack of oxygen.
Magic.
Finding food after the flood.
Magic.
The genetic diversity.
Magic.
Huh. So God, can I ask you something?
What?
Well, why the fuck didn't you just use magic in the first place? I mean, you want to kill off all the humans? Just stop their hearts. I mean, just make everybody have a heart attack. Magic heart attacks. Or I mean, just send out a plague or something. I mean, what are you thinking, God? I mean, what are you thinking?
I didn't want to do a plague. I wanted to do a flood. I wanted
You're nice, bud. Okay, we'll do some magic and we'll do all. Okay, just like you said. Okay, calm down. Calm down. Fuck me.
What? Dad, I don't think I heard you right. What did you just say? I said God told me that it's up to us to repopulate the earth. So get busy. Have a nice day, son. Repopulate the earth?
Hey, Dad. Hey, I just thought of a new joke. How many animals can you fit into a pair of pantyhose? Huh? 10 of them?
Anyway, I'm not going to play it all. Probably get a copyright strike, right?
No, he won't copyright strike you.
Oh, you won't? Okay.
Nope.
Little piggies, 2 calves, a beaver, and an ass.
Go fuck your sister.
Oh my God. Oh, that's pretty good.
That was good.
That was good.
So that took you away from the faith?
That would.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the end for me. That was the breaking of the dam, the releasing of the flood waters, as it were. After that one epiphany led to the next. But yep, that was it.
Go duck your sister. That's better. That's better. Is more correct.
Yeah, it's an animal theme too.
Yep. I used to try to drown my little sister all the time. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Yes, you did.
Shit.
Get a lawyer.
Scott, you're my producer. You're supposed to stop me from doing that.
Stop doing that, Speed.
Fuck, that ain't gonna work. You gotta have to think of something else. Something a little more immediate. Something more preventative measure.
Yeah,
Well,
when I was in seminary, I utilized the library, and they actually had an extensive, huge library. It's gigantic. All religious books. Not all religious books. Never mind. But anyway, I did a lot of research on young Earth creationism and different viewpoints. And by the time I got out of seminary, just from my own independent study, I no longer believed that Noah's Ark, was a real thing. Maybe it was based on a local flood, of gigantic proportion, but it's mostly symbolic, and just trying to emphasize God's disapproval of sin and its effect on all of creation, blah, blah, blah. But it took me a while before I gave up belief in God altogether.
Yep, that Deconverted Man. That's the story I'm sticking with. That's why I had to put her in the dryer afterwards. So anyway,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to answer Stephanie's question, yep, a crack in the firmament, exactly.
Yeah. Along
St.
those
Jefferson,
lines,
are you sharing something with us?
I am a picture of the firmament.
Oh, okay.
Along those lines, Scott. Basically, a Deconverted Man on Captain Death yesterday talked in detail about his deconversion experience, and it was really
it was very interesting.
Yeah, yep. And everybody should go watch that because it's linked in the description. Okay. So let's see, Pillars of the Earth. What the fuck are those? Primeval ocean. Okay, so that's the ocean under the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Or where'd all the water come from exactly? Let's see. Heavens of fire for the Greeks and others. Ocean of heaven, firmament with the stars stuck in them, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is pretty fucking accurate. This is kind of what plate tectonics. They got that going up here, don't they? Yeah. They nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when that fucker cracked open and there were these 700 high fucking foot high tsunamis. I don't understand how the sediments got laid out the way they did, to tell you the truth. Well, oh no, I know how. Magic did it. Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm a Christian again. This argument that deconverted man. Hallelujah.
Bob will need.
Well, they say that you need a philosophy that includes the least amount of assumptions, and I'm like, well, you really do simplify everything down as much as possible to say magic, man, and sky did magic, right? That is the most simple possible explanation for everything. So,
hi, I'm a creationist. How did I get here?
Ooh, so we have a video by Deconverted Man.
Nice.
I will link that in the description as well, because that's the way I do. Let's see. Okay. History of the Entire World by Creationists. 14 minutes.
Oh, okay. And lo, a spirit was hovering over the earth that Trinitarians will call the Holy Spirit later.
Okay. I'm going to link this in the description.
Nice.
And 169 likes, 4.6K views. This guy's got it going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
I will never have a video that does that ever. It will never happen.
We're lucky if we get over 100. We're so
Yeah.
popular. We are such a popular channel.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think, guys? Shooter in the head?
Yeah,
It's probably about that time, especially if we're gonna do another one later.
Yeah, we need to go eat our cornflakes and get ready for that.
Now, I believe that I will be watching my grandsons this evening, so there's a hard limit.
Yeah, and Android has not gotten back to me about any kind of timing, which that young man was supposed to do yesterday, but we'll see.
Oh, these kids today.
They're so different. They're so different than we were. Us long-haired, mushroom munching psychedelic hippies from back in the 60s. We were responsible.
You were on top of it.
We were on top of it. I mean, if we said we had some shit with 300 micrograms of LSD in it, you could bet your ass it was 300 micrograms. No error margin of 1 microgram.
You know, I'll bet it's all that relativity that young man's got up in his head. It's done ruined him.
Yep.
He doesn't think time is real anymore. It's all relative to your speed.
Yes, kids today. Okay, guys.
All right, guys.
So thank you everyone for showing up, and I didn't call out everybody, and I should have, but I've linked 2 videos with Deconverted Man featured, and we are going to have a talk, you and I, soon, I hope. So anyway,
We need to set up a show with Samus because he's Samus. You know, what the hell?
He's Samus, yeah. Okay. Shooting in the head, guys.
Shooting in the head.
See you, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. It's always great to have you here.
And I must mention, goodbye.